I'm Isla, I'm 18 years old, and my parents are taking me to court for stealing their retirement fund. The thing is, this supposed retirement fund is my full-ride college scholarship, the one I spent 4 years of sleepless nights and relentless work to earn. The lawsuit papers sitting on the rickety desk in my tiny rented room are a testament to how deeply, fantastically wrong a family can go. It wasn't always a legal battle, of course. Before the lawyers and the court filings, the conflict was quieter, simmering under the surface of our family life in the form of 1,000 tiny cuts. My family was a solar system, and my younger sister, Maya, was the sun. My parents, Carol and Mark, and I were just planets caught in her orbit, expected to circle her, provide her warmth, and never, ever cast a shadow on her. I remember my 10th birthday. I had asked for a party with my friends, maybe at the local bowling alley. My mother, Carol, had given me a tired smile and patted my head. "Oh, sweetie, we're a little tight on money right now. Be understanding." Understanding was my primary role in the family. I got a small, store-bought cake, and my parents and Maya sang a perfunctory, happy birthday. I blew out the candles wishing for the bowling party I knew I'd never get. 2 months later, it was Maya's 8th birthday. The financial tightness had miraculously vanished. Our small backyard was transformed into a carnival, complete with a rented bouncy castle, a professional face painter, and a mountain of presents that blocked the view of the kitchen. All of Maya's classmates were there, running around with sugar-fueled joy. My mom floated through the crowd, beaming, telling everyone how they'd do anything for their little girl. When I asked her, my voice small, why my birthday was different, her smile tightened. "Maya is more sensitive, Isla," she'd said, as if that explained everything. "She needs these things. You're the strong one." Being the strong one meant being the forgotten one. This dynamic bled into every aspect of our lives. When I was 15, I got a part-time job at a local library to start saving for a car and eventually for college. My parents praised my work ethic, not because they were proud, but because it meant they were no longer financially responsible for me. My paycheck went towards my own school supplies, my clothes, my field trip fees. Meanwhile, Maya, who was 13, would simply announce that she needed a new $200 pair of sneakers or the latest phone. And my father, Mark, would sigh and hand over his credit card. "She has to fit in at school," he'd say, avoiding my gaze. "You know how kids can be." I knew. I was one of those kids, wearing second-hand jeans and using a phone with a cracked screen. But my needs were always deemed less important than Maya's wants. The most painful examples weren't about money, though. They were about recognition. In my junior year, I won the district science fair. My project was a small-scale water purification system I had designed and built myself. I was so proud. I came home with a blue ribbon and a trophy, my heart pounding with the hope that this time, they would see me. My mom glanced at the trophy on the counter. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she said, before turning her attention back to Maya, who was dramatically complaining about a C+ she got on a history quiz. My dad spent the next hour coaching Maya on how to talk to her teacher for extra credit, while my trophy sat on the kitchen table, a monument to my invisible achievements. The next morning, I found it tucked away on a bookshelf in the living room, behind a large, smiling photo of Maya. So when the letter came, the thick, heavy envelope from one of the best engineering universities in the country, I knew better than to expect a parade. But still, a part of me, the foolish, hopeful part that refused to die, thought this would be different. This wasn't a science fair trophy. This was life-changing. This was a full-ride scholarship, covering tuition, housing, everything. It was my ticket out, my future, my proof that all the sacrifices, all the nights I'd stayed up studying while the rest of the house was asleep, had been worth it. It was my name, Isla, on that letter. It was my achievement. I was so naive. I thought it was mine. In our family, I was never allowed to have anything that was truly mine. My dream of becoming an engineer wasn't just a career choice, it was an escape plan. Since I was a little girl, I was fascinated by how things worked. While Maya played with dolls, I took apart old radios and broken toasters, trying to understand their inner workings. In the logical, predictable world of circuits and mechanics, I found a peace and order that was absent in my own home. Everything had a purpose, every component a function. If something was broken, you could fix it. It was a comforting thought. High school became my sanctuary and my training ground. I knew my parents wouldn't, or couldn't, pay for college. Their finances were a constant, murky source of anxiety in our house, a topic of whispered, late-night arguments that would cease the moment I entered a room. My only way to a better life was to be so good that someone else would pay for it. So I worked. I gave up parties, football games, and lazy weekends with friends. My evenings were a ritual of textbooks, equations, and endless practice problems. The librarians at my part-time job knew me by name and would save me a quiet corner cubicle where I could spread out my work. My boss, a kind older woman named Mrs. Gable, would often slide a cup of tea onto my desk, telling me not to burn myself out. "You have a fire in you, Isla," she told me once. "Don't let anyone put it out." I poured all that fire into one singular goal, the Northwood STEM Excellence Scholarship. It was a legendary award offered by a prestigious university, famous for its engineering program. It was a full ride, but it was more than that. It was a beacon. It was awarded to only 10 students in the country each year. The application was grueling. It required not just perfect grades and test scores, but also a series of essays and a personal project. My project was the evolution of my science fair winner, a more advanced, efficient, and portable water purification system designed for use in disaster-stricken areas. I spent months perfecting it, soldering circuits in our garage until my fingers were numb, writing and rewriting code until my eyes burned. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. It was the most alive I had ever felt. The day the decisions were scheduled to be released online, I couldn't breathe. I sat in front of my laptop, my hands trembling so badly I could barely type in my password. The screen loaded, and for a moment I saw only a blur of words. Then, a single word came into focus. "Congratulations." Tears streamed down my face, hot and immediate. I had done it. Against all odds, I had done it. I read the rest of the letter through my blurry vision. "We are pleased to offer you the Northwood STEM Excellence Scholarship. Covers the full cost of tuition, room, board, and a stipend for books and materials." It was real. It was all real. I felt a wave of pure, unadulterated joy wash over me, so potent it made me dizzy. For the first time, I saw my future clearly. I saw a college campus, lecture halls, labs filled with incredible technology. I saw myself designing, building, creating things that could help people. I saw a life that I built, a life that was stable and secure, a life that was mine. The weight that I had carried on my shoulders for years, the weight of being understanding, of being the strong one, of being invisible, evaporated. I was light. I was free. I ran downstairs, clutching my laptop like the Holy Grail. My parents and Maya were in the living room, watching some reality TV show. For the first time in a long time, I didn't care about being an interruption. I didn't temper my joy or swallow my excitement. "I got it," I yelled, my voice cracking. "I got the scholarship, the full ride, I'm going to college." They all turned to look at me, their faces a mixture of surprise and confusion. The blare of the television filled the sudden silence. "You got what?" my father, Mark, asked, squinting as if he couldn't quite understand me. "The Northwood Scholarship," I said, setting the laptop down on the coffee table, open to the acceptance page. "It's a full ride. It pays for everything." I waited for the smiles, for the congratulations, for a hug. I waited for them to finally see me, to finally be proud of me. Instead, what I saw was deeply unsettling. My mother, Carol, leaned forward, her eyes scanning the screen not with pride, but with an intense, calculating focus. My father peered over her shoulder. Maya just looked bored. "A full ride," my mother said slowly, her voice flat. "So, they give you money." "They pay the university directly for tuition and housing," I explained, my excitement starting to curdle into confusion. "And there's a stipend for books and living expenses. I won't have to worry about anything." "A stipend," my father repeated, testing the word. "How much is the stipend?" It was the wrong question. It wasn't "what will you study?" or "aren't you excited?" It was "how much?" I don't know the exact amount yet, I stammered, but it's enough to cover everything I need. My mother sat back on the couch, sharing a look with my father that I couldn't decipher. It was a silent, loaded conversation, one they'd had a million times before. I felt a familiar cold dread begin to creep back into my chest, chasing away the warmth of my victory. Well, my mother said, forcing a thin smile, that's practical. The conversation ended there. They turned back to the TV, and I was left standing in the middle of the living room, my monumental achievement shrinking into a mirror. E-financial transaction. The other shoe dropped a few days later. I was in my room, researching dorm essentials when my parents knocked and came in. They didn't smile. They closed the door behind them, and my heart sank. This was the posture they took when they were about to deliver bad news or make a demand. Isla, we need to talk to you about this scholarship, my mother began, sitting on the edge of my bed. My father stood awkwardly by the door, his arms crossed. Okay, I said cautiously. Your father and I have been talking, she continued, her voice taking on a tone of rehearsed reasonableness. And we've come to a decision. We think it's wonderful that you've been given this opportunity. I held my breath. But a full scholarship is a lot, she said. More than one person needs, really, especially when you have a family. I stared at her, my mind refusing to connect the dots. What are you talking about? We've done some research, my father chimed in, finally speaking. A scholarship like that, it's worth over $200,000 over 4 years. That's a huge amount of money. It's not money they just hand me, I said, my voice rising in panic. It's for my education. Don't take that tone with us, my mother snapped, her gentle facade cracking. We've sacrificed a lot for you and your sister. Your father works his fingers to the bone at that warehouse. We haven't had a vacation in 10 years. We've been putting off fixing the roof. We have no retirement savings, Isla. Nothing. Her eyes were wide and pleading, but there was something hard and demanding underneath. This scholarship, it's a blessing for the whole family. And then she said it, the words that would shatter my world. We think it's only fair that you give us the money, she said. You can go to a local community college for a couple of years. It's much cheaper. The rest of the money, we can use it to pay off the house, fix things up, and put it away for our retirement. It's the least you can do. It's your contribution. I stared at them, speechless. The air was sucked out of my lungs. They saw my scholarship, my dream, my future, as a lottery ticket they had just won. They wanted me to throw away the greatest opportunity of my life so they could have a new roof and a pension. No, I whispered, then louder. No, absolutely not. It's a scholarship. It has my name on it. It's for me. It's for my education. I can't just give it to you. My father's face hardened. Don't be selfish, Isla. Family helps each other out. We're your parents. You owe us. I owe you, I shot back, a decade of resentment boiling over. I've been paying for my own clothes and school supplies since I was 15. I worked for this. You did nothing to help me. You didn't even care until you thought you could get money out of it. Just then, the door opened and Maya walked in, drawn by the shouting. What's going on? She asked, looking from my furious face to our parents' stern ones. Your sister, my mother said, her voice dripping with venom, is refusing to help her own family. She's being incredibly selfish. She wants to keep all that money for herself and leave us with nothing. Maya looked at me, her expression instantly mirroring our mother's disappointment. Isla, why are you being like this? She asked. Mom and Dad do everything for us. It's just some money. You can go to school anywhere. You don't understand. I yelled, looking at the three of them, a united front against me. It's not just some money. It's my future. My mother stood up, her face a mask of cold fury. We are your parents, and you will do as you are told. That money is a family asset. We will be taking control of it. This conversation is over. They walked out of my room, leaving me trembling in the ruins of what I once called my family. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound, it felt like a physical blow. They hadn't just asked for my scholarship, They had tried to steal my soul. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just fighting for my education anymore. I was fighting for my life. The days that followed were a living nightmare. My home, which had never truly felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The air was thick with a toxic silence, broken only by my mother's martyred sighs or my father's clipped, one-word answers to my questions. They treated me like a traitor, a stranger under their roof. The pressure campaign began in earnest. It was a coordinated assault on my will. My mother would leave brochures for the local community college on my pillow. My father would talk loudly on the phone with his brother about the rising costs of living and how they'd probably have to sell the house. They were trying to break me, to fill me with so much guilt that I would simply surrender. "You're tearing this family apart, Isla," my mother would say, her eyes welling with crocodile tears. "All this fighting, it's not healthy for Maya." "You owe us," my father would repeat, his voice low and menacing. "We put a roof over your head and food on the table for 18 years. It's time to pay it back." When I refused to buckle, they escalated. They took my phone to stop you from getting more selfish ideas from your friends. They took my laptop, the very tool I had used to win my freedom. They told me I was grounded, that I wasn't to leave the house except for work. I was 18 years old, a legal adult, yet they were treating me like a rebellious child. They were trying to sever my connections to the outside world, to isolate me until their voices were the only ones I could hear. I knew I had to protect the scholarship. The first thing I did was change all my passwords at the library and create a new, secret email address. I contacted the university's financial aid office, explaining that I was in a difficult family situation, and asked them to ensure that all communication came only to my new email and that no information was to be released to anyone else, especially my parents. The administrator was kind and professional, assuring me that the scholarship was legally mine and could not be accessed by anyone else. That small act of rebellion, of taking back control, felt like a lifeline. But I had underestimated their desperation. One evening, I came home from work to find a thick, formal envelope on the hall table with my name on it. It wasn't from the university. It was from a law firm. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside, dense paragraphs of legal jargon swam before my eyes, but I could make out the words, Carol and Mark last name versus Isla last name, and the phrases, breach of verbal contract, misappropriation of family assets, financial restitution. They were suing me. My own parents were taking me to court. The world tilted on its axis. It was so absurd, so monstrous, that I almost laughed. They were claiming I had entered into a verbal agreement to turn over all my earnings to them. They were classifying my scholarship, an academic award for my personal merit, as a family asset that I had stolen. The last vestiges of hope that we could ever resolve this, that they would ever see reason, died in that moment. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was war, and I was completely out of my depth. Panic gave way to a cold, hard resolve. I couldn't do this alone. The next day, I skipped my lunch break at work and went to see my old high school guidance counselor, Ms. Albright. I sat in her office, the lawsuit papers trembling in my hands, and told her everything. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, and finally, to righteous anger on my behalf. "This is unconscionable, Isla," she said, her voice firm. "They can't do this. They have no legal grounds." "But they are doing it," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know what to do. I can't afford a lawyer." Ms. Albright nodded, already typing on her computer. "Don't you worry about that. I know someone." She picked up her phone and made a call. "Hello, Robert. It's Alina Albright. I have a student, one of my best, who is in an unbelievable situation. Yes, pro bono." An hour later, I was sitting in the modest office of a lawyer named Robert Evans. He was a calm, gray-haired man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He read the lawsuit papers, his brow furrowed. He listened to my story without interruption, from the birthday parties to the trophy to the moment my parents laid claim to my future. When I finished, he looked at me, his expression a mixture of sympathy and steel. "Isla," he said, his voice quiet but firm. What your parents are doing is what we call frivolous litigation. It's a lawsuit with no legal merit, designed to intimidate and harass. They have absolutely no claim to your scholarship. It is an award, not an asset. It is non-transferable and designated for your education. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on his desk. They are counting on you being scared. They are counting on you giving in because they are your parents. We are not going to let that happen. I will represent you, and we are going to fight this. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Walking out of his office, I felt the ground beneath my feet begin to stabilize. The war had begun, but now I had an ally. Going back to that house was impossible. It was no longer a home. It was enemy territory. With Mr. Evans's help and a very reluctant call to my manager at the library, I arranged to work more hours so I could afford a room. I found a small, cheap room for rent in a house on the other side of town, owned by an elderly woman who mostly kept to herself. The night I left, I packed a single duffel bag with my clothes, my toiletries, and the few sentimental items I owned. I moved like a ghost through the house while my parents and Maya were out. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a goo. End shot. As I stood in the doorway of my room, taking one last look at the place where I had spent my entire life, I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing but a profound sense of relief, the feeling of a prisoner tasting freedom for the first time. The isolation, however, was swift and brutal. My parents, realizing they had lost physical control over me, launched a new kind of attack. They poisoned the well. They called my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, everyone. They spun a heartbreaking tale of a cruel, ungrateful daughter who had come into a fortune and decided to abandon her struggling family. They were the victims. I was the villain. The phone calls started a few days after I moved out. My Aunt Sarah was the first. "Isla, honey, what is this I'm hearing?" she'd asked, her voice oozing with concern that felt entirely fake. "Your mother is devastated. She said you took some money and ran away. Your father is worried sick." "Aunt Sarah, that's not what happened," I tried to explain. "It was my college scholarship. They wanted me to give it to them." "Now, Isla, they are your parents," she'd clucked dismissively. "You have to be a family. Whatever this scholarship is, you can't just throw them away. They raised you. You need to go home and apologize." It was the same conversation over and over again. No one wanted to hear my side of the story. They had already been given the narrative, Isla, the selfish monster. My own family, people who had known me my entire life, were choosing to believe the worst of me without a single question. The betrayal was deeper than just my parents. It was my entire extended family. I was an outcast. The cruelest blows came from Maya. A few days after a particularly nasty call from my grandmother, I received a string of texts from my sister. "Everyone is so upset because of you. Mom cries all the time. I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family. You're a horrible person. You stole Mom and Dad's retirement money." That last one broke me. Their retirement money. She believed it. She truly, completely believed the lie. My own sister, who had slept in the room next to mine for 16 years, thought I was a thief. I typed out a long reply, trying to explain, trying to make her understand, but before I could send it, another text came through. "I'm blocking you. Don't ever contact me again." And just like that, she was gone. My last connection to the family I had grown up with was severed. The loneliness was a physical presence. It sat with me in my small, bare room. It walked with me to work. It was a constant, aching weight in my chest. There were nights I would just lie on my bed and stare at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. Maybe it would have been easier to just give in, to sacrifice my dream for a quiet life. But then I would remember the look in my mother's eyes when she demanded the money. I would remember the cold, hard set of my father's jaw, and I would remember the feeling of reading that acceptance letter. That was real. My dream was real. My hard work was real. They were trying to take something that I had earned through sheer force of will, and my loneliness was the price of refusing to let them. My only constants were my job at the library and my weekly meetings with Mr. Evans. Mrs. Gable, my boss, must have guessed that something was wrong. She never asked questions, but she gave me extra shifts without complaint and always made sure I had a hot meal from the staff room. Her quiet, steady support was a small island of kindness in an ocean of hostility. Mr. Evans was my rock. He meticulously prepared our case, even though he knew it was almost laughably simple. "The truth is on our side, Isla," he would say during our meetings. "All we have to do is present it. Their case is built on emotion and lies. Our case is built on a single, undeniable fact." He would point to the file on his desk, the one that contained a pristine copy of my scholarship letter. "This is the fact," he'd say, "and in a court of law, facts are all that matter." As the court date approached, I was terrified, but I was also ready. I had lost my family, my home, and the life I had known. I had nothing left to lose. All I had was the truth, and I clung to it like a life raft. The courtroom was exactly as I'd imagined it: cold, imposing, and smelling faintly of old paper and stale coffee. The polished wood of the benches felt hard and unforgiving. Everything was a shade of brown or beige, designed to be impersonal and sterile. But for me, it was the most personal place on earth. It was the arena where the final, bloody act of my family's drama would play out. I sat next to Mr. Evans at our table, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles were white. Across the room, I saw them. My parents, Carol and Mark, sat with their lawyer. My mother was dressed in a conservative navy blue dress, a string of pearls around her neck. She was the very picture of a wrong. Respectable mother. My father sat stiffly beside her in an ill-fitting suit, his gaze fixed on the wall, refusing to look at me. Maya wasn't there. I was both relieved and heartbroken by her absence. The proceedings began, and a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Their lawyer presented their case first. He painted a picture of a salt-of-the-earth couple who had worked tirelessly their whole lives, only to be betrayed by their eldest daughter. He spoke of a verbal family agreement, a sacred, unspoken pact that all resources would be pooled for the good of the family unit. He made it sound as if I had won the lottery and fled the country. Then he called my mother to the stand. Carol walked slowly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She looked frail, broken. It was a masterful performance. "Mrs. Last Name," her lawyer began gently, "can you please tell the court about your relationship with your daughter, Isla?" My mother's voice trembled. "She was my everything," she whispered, her voice catching. "We gave her a wonderful life. We always supported her dreams." I almost choked. Supported my dreams? They hadn't even known what they were. "And can you tell us about this financial arrangement?" the lawyer prodded. "Oh, it wasn't formal," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "We're a family. We just always understood that we were a team. We were saving for our future, our retirement. We told the girls that any big opportunities, any windfalls, it was for all of us, for the family's future." Then came the climax of her testimony. The lawyer asked what happened when I received the scholarship. My mother's face crumpled. The tears came, real or not, they were wet and convincing. She turned on us," she sobbed. "She said the money was all hers. She was so cold, it was like looking at a stranger." She looked directly at the judge, her voice rising to a dramatic wail. "She stole our future. She took our retirement fund, our one chance to have a secure old age, and she ran away with it, my own daughter." The courtroom was silent, save for her theatrical sobs. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, judging me. I felt like the monster she was painting me to be. My father's testimony was shorter, but just as damning. He backed up every word she said, his voice monotone, his eyes never once meeting mine. He was a hollow man, a puppet for his wife's greed. Finally, it was our turn. "The defense calls Isla Last Name to the stand," Mr. Evans announced. My legs felt like lead as I walked to the witness box. I sat down, my heart pounding against my ribs. I swore the oath, my voice barely a whisper. I looked at my parents. My mother glared at me with pure hatred. My father was pale, finally looking at me with an expression of profound shame. Mr. Evans approached, his demeanor calm and reassuring. "Isla," he said, his voice clear and steady, "please tell the court, in your own words, about the academic award you received." I took a deep breath and began. I spoke about the years of hard work, the late nights, the sacrifices. I spoke about my passion for engineering. I didn't speak with anger, but with a quiet, sad certainty. "And Isla," Mr. Evans continued, "what is this retirement fund that your parents are referring to?" "It's the Northwood STEM Excellence Scholarship," I said clearly. "So it is not a cash prize. It is not lottery winnings." "No, sir. It is a dedicated academic scholarship." Mr. Evans turned to the judge. "Your Honor, at this time I would like to present Exhibit A." He walked to the clerk and handed over a file. A copy was given to the judge and another to my parents' lawyer. My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. "Isla," Mr. Evans said, holding up his own copy, "can you identify this document for the court?" "It's the official scholarship award letter from the university," I said. "Would you please read the first line of the second paragraph aloud?" I cleared my throat. My voice was shaking, but I forced it to be steady. "The Northwood University is pleased to award the STEM Excellence Scholarship to its recipient." I paused, taking another breath, and looked straight at my mother. "Isla last name." The courtroom was utterly silent. My mother's mouth fell open slightly. "Thank you, Isla," Mr. Evans said. "Now, could you please read the line detailing the purpose of these funds?" I found the sentence. "These funds are non-transferable and are to be applied directly to the cost of tuition, room, board, and other required educational expenses for the sole benefit of the recipient, Isla last name." I finished reading, and the silence in the room deepened. It was a heavy, profound silence, the kind that follows a lightning strike. My mother's theatrical tears had dried up instantly. Her face was a mask of shock and disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that a piece of paper could hold more power than her lies. My father had gone from pale to ghostly white, and he finally sank his head into his hands. Their lawyer was staring at the letter, his face slack. He knew, they all knew, the lie had been exposed. Mr. Evans addressed the judge. "Your Honor, the document speaks for itself. This is not a family asset. It is not a retirement fund. It is a non-transferable academic award granted to my client for her undeniable merit. The plaintiffs have absolutely no legal claim to it whatsoever." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "This lawsuit is an attempt to extort a young woman and sabotage her future. It is a disgrace." The courtroom fell silent. So silent you could hear a pin drop. The judge stared down at my parents from his bench, his expression one of utter contempt. My mother's carefully constructed performance, her story of betrayal, her tears, it had all evaporated, leaving only the ugly, greedy truth. And in that silence, I finally felt the weight lift. I had won. The judge did not deliberate for long. He lowered his reading glasses and peered down at my parents, his face a thundercloud of indignation. "Mr. and Mrs. Last Name," he began, his voice dangerously low and sharp. "In my 20 years on this bench, I have seen a great deal of conflict, but rarely have I witnessed such a shameless and predatory attempt by parents to defraud their own child." My mother flinched as if struck. My father seemed to shrink into his suit. "This lawsuit is not only frivolous," the judge continued, his voice rising, "it is malicious. You have used the legal system in an attempt to bully, intimidate, and financially cripple your daughter, all because she had the audacity to succeed on her own merit. You have wasted this court's valuable time and taxpayer resources on a fantasy built of greed." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of warmth in his eyes. "Miss Last Name, congratulations on your scholarship. You have clearly earned it, and I wish you the very best in your studies." He then turned his glare back to my parents. "This case is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am ordering you to pay for your daughter's legal fees, and let me give you a piece of free advice. I strongly suggest you reflect on what you have done here today. You came into this courtroom trying to steal your daughter's future. Instead, it appears you have simply destroyed your own family." With a final, resounding bang of his gavel, it was over. A wave of pure, dizzying relief washed over me. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I just felt empty and light. Mr. Evans put a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Isla," he said softly. I stood up and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. I didn't want to see their faces. I didn't want to hear their excuses or their accusations. As the heavy doors swung shut behind me, I felt a chapter of my life closing for good. I was sad for the family I wished I had, but I was not sad to leave the one I actually got. A month later, the world was a different color. I was standing in the middle of my new dorm room. It was small, sterile, and smelled of fresh paint, but it was mine, my sanctuary, my beginning. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Outside, the university campus was alive with the buzz of new students, a symphony of hope and possibility. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, my mother's number. I hadn't heard a word from them since the court date. My finger hovered over the delete button, but morbid curiosity won. "You've destroyed this family. We hope you're happy alone." There was no apology, no remorse, just the same old blame, the same old poison. A year ago, that message would have shattered me. Now, I just felt a quiet pity for her. She was trapped in a prison of her own making, and she didn't even know it. I deleted the message and blocked the number. My life was quiet now. I was starting from scratch. I had no family to call, no childhood home to visit for the holidays. The connections were gone, burned away in the fire of the lawsuit. It was a lonely feeling, but it wasn't a bad one. It was the clean, quiet loneliness of a field waiting to be planted. I had my classes, my books, my passion for engineering that now burned brighter than ever. I had a future that I had fought for and won. I looked out my dorm window at the sprawling campus, at the hundreds of other students who were all starting their own new stories. I was one of them now. I wasn't just the strong one or the forgotten one. I was Isla. I was an engineering student. I was a survivor. And for the first time in my life, I was completely and utterly free. To anyone watching who feels trapped in a situation that seems impossible, who feels like their dreams are being held hostage, please know this: your worth is not determined by those who refuse to see it. Your future is your own. Sometimes, the hardest be. Etals are the ones that lead to the most beautiful freedom. You are stronger than you know.